It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, Kansans have helped lead the way in honoring America's military veterans from the very beginnings up till now. See how the town of Valley Center is carrying on that respect for the men and women who have kept our nation safe. Also, meet the Newton woman who discovered a talent she never knew she had and is now getting national attention for it. Plus, this Wichita man says it's the only way to fly. See what it takes to be top dog in the action-packed sport of drone racing. And in our Kansas Wild Edge report, it's a battle for survival in the water and a non-stop competition to see who eats who. I'm Sierra Scott. A half hour of information and inspiration is queued up and ready to roll on this week's Positively Kansas.
Positively Kansas is brought to you in part by...
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
No state has a prouder history of honoring our war veterans than Kansas. Whether it's Memorial Day in the spring, Veterans Day in the fall, or any other day of the year, our men and women who've served get our thanks and respect. Now a recent trend has emerged in several Kansas communities to remind people of the heroism and sacrifice every time they visit downtown. Chris Frank has the story.
Emporia is the founding city for Veterans Day. What got started in Emporia in 1953 then was recognized nationally a year later, with Congress changing Armistice Day to Veterans Day. Emporia is also one of the first communities in the U.S. to honor veterans by hanging banners with their photos along downtown streets. Emporia has hung these banners for 8 years. Since then, several other Kansas communities have done so, including El Dorado and Rose Hill. Valley Center will become the latest Kansas community to raise veterans' banners on its main street.
The brackets on the poles, there's 8 poles in the 2-block period that we can utilize.
Marcia Hubert, a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, helped get the City Council's approval for hanging the banners on city-owned light poles after seeing the banners in Rose Hill.
The banners are provided by the City of Valley Center, and they fly other banners during the year. But for us this year, from July 1st through the end of September, we're hoping to have our first section of veteran banners installed.
Valley Center's Main Street Board is also promoting the veterans' banners.
Our goals are to get people downtown on Main Street, and we believe that this project will do that. And another goal we have is to beautify our Main Street, and we believe that the banners will achieve that as well.
So now these groups are seeking veterans and their families who would be interested in participating in the banner displays.
And we just encourage our local veterans to reach out to us and apply to have one of their banners flown.
There is a price for participants. The banners cost $225. Larry Strelo is the first veteran to apply for a Valley Center banner.
Valley is somewhat of a very patriotic town. There's a lot of veterans around, and I just wanted to be sure to try to get them to come out.
The guidelines call for the veteran to have a Valley Center connection.
Either they've lived here, they've gone to school here, they've worked here, something that ties them to the community.
Valley Center's Main Street has a capacity for 14 banners, but if the demand is high enough, they might expand the banners to Meridian Avenue. The city owns the pole brackets, which is the most expensive part of this. The city will store the banners when they're not flying. The hope is to get the banners up by the time the city has its Independence Day celebration July 4th, then fly them through the fall celebration in September. From Valley Center, this is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
Similar banner projects are emerging in other parts of the country, patterned after the efforts underway in Kansas. You never really know what you're capable of until you try. Well, a Newton woman learned that lesson by discovering a whole new talent and passion that is now proving to be her claim to fame, so to speak. Jim Grayway has the story.
Look around Candy Samuel's house and you will see faces.
I have Steven Tyler and Kid Rock.
Famous faces of musicians and actors.
This is my favorite drawing that I've done. It's a pastel of Johnny Depp.
And sports stars like the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs.
This is a drawing I did of Patrick Mahomes, and it's going to be given to him at a charity event.
They're all drawn by this Janie come lately to the art world, who up until a few years ago hadn't sketched a lick since high school.
Well, I was almost 50 years old. My mom had passed away, and I was kind of sad and depressed, and my son's like, "Mom, you need to do something to get out of this depression." And I was like, "Well, what?" And he says, "Well, you used to draw. Why don't you do that again?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't even know I could do it." And I said, "What would I do?" And he gave me this picture of the artist Pink. She's a singer. And I said, "Yeah, right. You expect me to do that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I didn't figure you could." And he threw it at me. And I was like, oh boy, challenge is on.
Candy picked up a pencil, started drawing, and the rest is history.
I had no idea it was in me. I'm still shocked. Sometimes I'm just like, wow, I can't believe I did that. It makes me cry sometimes because I can't believe I do this.
Candy does commission work to help pay for the family groceries, but first and foremost, her art is a labor of love that she loves sharing. After Dog the bounty hunter's wife, Beth, died, Candy drew this picture of Beth and sent it to Dog. Next thing she knew, her drawing was being featured on the Dr. Oz show.
This a fan drew of Beth with chalk. And that, besides a picture of Bethy, is the closest I've ever seen anybody get exactly right. They even have her beauty mark right.
It just made me cry. It was so awesome.
Candy's emergence as a celebrity artist shows that life can take exciting turns when you least expect it.
Follow your dreams. I had no idea I could do this.
Until you try, you never have the full picture of what you're capable of. In Newton, I'm Jim Grayway for Positively Kansas.
When Celine Dion's husband died a few years ago, Candy also drew a picture of him. While in Las Vegas, she was able to hand it to Celine's bodyguard, who promised to give it to the superstar singer. Well, here's a story about another Kansas artist whose talent seems to amaze a lot of people. He's helping rewrite the book on what people with different challenges can accomplish.
A lot of people go through their whole lives and not really know what makes them special. But, for Cole, it was just, it's always been art.
At a very young age, Cole Bullock showed signs of being a very gifted artist.
Finding out that he could do these great drawings on the sidewalk is where it all started, with sidewalk chalk. And on nice days, we were always outside with the sidewalk chalk. He didn't like playing ball and all that. He would be, even if we were outside and the kids were out doing something else, he'd be over there just laying on the sidewalk drawing these little masterpieces. And our neighbors would come by and go, "Wow, who did that?" And I'd be like, "Cole did it."
Some people thought it was all the more amazing given the fact that Cole was diagnosed with autism at age 5. His mom says Cole's story should be a lesson for how families, schools, and society view people with autism.
When kids are labeled with a certain disability, not that it's the school's fault, and I think it's great that, they help kids, but I think they like to just push them into certain things, and they don't, there's something great about everybody, I think. And a lot of kids that have a disability, some sort of label, they, put them in some menial kind of task. And I just didn't want that to ever happen with him. I wanted to find out what it was that his gift was. Like through the schools and things, they'll have him stocking shelves or sacking groceries or, doing some kind of a maintenance job. Whereas I know that a lot of these kids have some gift. And I'm lucky, and I think he's lucky because I have a spouse that supports me and gives me the time and the ability to help him.
Some of the most in-demand prints of Cole's work include Woo Shock and the Kansas Jayhawk.
People just started going, I want one, responding, please, how do I get one? And so that's kind of what started the whole Facebook page and just showing people some of his other work.
So now, at age 22, drawing has become Cole's career. He's taking art classes at Wichita State to experiment with painting and other mediums. Meanwhile, he keeps cranking out these oil pastels. Cole tends to draw things he likes, including dogs.
And I'm making sure that the blue doesn't touch the inside of the dog. You have to be very careful when you're touching things in art pictures, when the colors touching each other.
With Cole being such a great artist, the obvious question is, does that talent run in the family?
Well, I can draw, and
Mom doesn't really know anything about art.
Okay, but I used to draw Disney figures for him, and I can't do what he does.
Cole is establishing himself as a gifted artist and an example of what's possible, no matter what label you carry in life. You can keep up to date on his latest projects and see photos of his work on his Facebook page. Just search for Cole Bullock Art. Wichita has long been the epicenter for manufacturing and flying airplanes. But over the past few years, a new kind of aviation has emerged, and it makes sense that a Wichita man would be one of the trailblazers. Here's Jim Grayway with the story.
Some of the best aircraft pilots in the world come from Wichita. Here's a man continuing in that tradition. Check this out. Here in the air capital, you can add Brian Morris's name to the list of world-class aviators making their mark.
I always wanted to fly. I wanted to be a full-size pilot, but I always kind of scared of the thing crashing. And now I have the ability to go anywhere, just like you're flying.
Morris is one of the world's top drone racers.
The first big race I won was in France. It was called the 3D Cup. The Sky Hero were the people that were sponsoring me. I hadn't spent a lot of time with them. They're a Belgian company, but they brought me over to France and they said, oh, you got to win. And I won, and I don't know how, because I was so nervous during that race. I was just shaking like crazy, so I could barely hold onto the sticks. And from there, it's snowballed.
An IT specialist by trade, drone racing has become his second full-time job.
What makes me good at it? The insane amount of time I spend on it.
He practices 20 hours during the week in Wichita and then travels to races around the world.
There's a drone race every single weekend.
3, 2, 1, drone!
Here we go!
At the 2016 World Drone Prix in Dubai.
It is really tense and it's getting fired up, and the crowd as well is getting fired up.
Morris's second place finish earned his team a cool $270,000 prize.
Incredible. This is amazing.
Morris was already experienced at flying radio-controlled helicopters when he took up drone flying 3 years ago. That put him on the fast track for becoming a champion racer, which he takes very seriously.
We never really know what kind of track we're going to show up to. So you might get a small tight track, which takes a little guy like this. You might get a big open track, which takes a fast one like this. So you got medium range tracks. We got night courses. So I have a special night camera on this one right here that can see at night.
His fastest drone can fly 80 miles per hour. The best view is always from the onboard camera, which is what the pilots look at as they fly. And it can be exciting to watch.
At the peak of the championship, we are witnessing an interesting display of endurance and strategy.
Now that ESPN has started televising some of the races, the sport is really taking off. And Morris is having to work even harder to keep a high ranking.
The biggest limitation here is weather. The Florida guys run all year round. Those guys can practice, and that's rough. I remember last year it being 28 degrees and some maybe a little freezing rain coming down or something like that. I'm right here practicing. I don't have any choice. I got a contest the next weekend, so I have to be ready to go for it.
He's the latest Wichitan to make a name for himself in the aviation world.
I love the feeling of flying, and this feels like, hey, you're flying. You're in the cockpit.
A new kind of aviation trailblazer with his eyes in the sky and his feet on the ground.
I'm Jim Grayway for Positively Kansas.
Morris decided to go out on top, so not long after that interview, he retired from racing. But he's still involved. He goes to races, takes pictures, and mentors some of the young and up-and-comers in the sport. Now to the great outdoors, where it's a dog-eat-dog world, or something along those lines. In this week's Kansas Wild Edge Report, it's a case of eat or be eaten for creatures who live on or in the water.
Let's look at a food chain around one of Earth's most vibrant ecosystems, a marsh. Here, where water is usually present, a host of species makes its home. Water, plants, and sunlight create a soup of life-giving oxygen, where minute plants and animals suspend and feed each other. Tiny organisms feed larger organisms, and they, in turn, feed even larger organisms. Upward through a range of species in all seasons, this is a wetlands food chain. It starts small. Warm springtime water teems with invertebrates. Tiny water fleas and copepods eat algae and bacteria, and they are food for small fishes and minnows. These too are then eaten by small and larger fish. In turn, minnows are food for a host of small predators. Many marshes are great bird stopovers, often due to huge populations of bloodworms. Hatches can be enormous, feeding aerial hunters like swallows and terns. And dragonflies. Shorebirds eagerly probe the mud to find them. And other surface feeders like large tadpoles and fish take midge pupae from the surface film. So do flying hunters like terns and swallows. At a similar rank in the food chain are aquatic worms and worm-like leeches that live in water and mucky vegetation. Worms eat algae and bacteria. Leeches suck the blood of frogs and snails, fish, and other small animals. Worms and leeches are eaten by birds and ducks, and by turtles and fish. Crustaceans are abundant in marshes. Crayfish scavenge or eat plants or animals, anything they can swallow. They and their eggs and young are eagerly sought for food by a variety of gilled and air-breathing predators. Crayfish are an important part of a wetlands food chain. common are frogs and toads, abundant in marshes in numerous species. Hatching from waterborne eggs, tadpoles eat algae and plant bits, gradually sprouting legs and assuming their familiar frog shapes. As they grow, they become predators on small insects, invertebrates, fish, and other frogs. In turn, they are eagerly eaten at all stages by many kinds of hunters. Larger hunters stalk the wetlands. Birds like coots are common in marshes, eating mainly plants, but also insects, tadpoles, and crustaceans. Like most birds, coots fall prey as well, sometimes from below when large snapping turtles catch and drown them. Cormorants are large diving birds fast enough to catch fish underwater. When they visit the marshes, their main food preference is fish. Among the best fish hunters are herons and egrets. They strike with lightning speed. These birds can swallow surprisingly large prey. Raptors with speed, agility, and powerful talons form the top of the food chain for birds at Kansas marshes. Bald eagles are the apex predators. Eagles are fast and strong enough to catch large prey in the air. On the mammal side, coyotes top many wetlands food chains. They hunt large and small prey, including mice, rabbits, birds, and fawns. These are snapshots of a wetlands food chain. Next time you're outdoors, realize the unseen drama that constantly unfolds. It may help you discover a world you never knew. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Next week, Mike shows us how fishing can be a valuable bonding experience for kids and parents or grandparents. While many Kansas towns are struggling with population loss and shuttered homes, a small town in the north central part of the state has found its niche. Brian Ramsdale shows us how Lindsborg is embracing the old Swedish keepsake and is now one of the most popular tourist destinations in the state.
Scattered along Main Street, Lindsborg, there's a sight you can't miss. Horse after horse, each one painted with pride and out on display. These are called Dollar horses, and they're what the town is known for.
It's really just a cultural item that's carried on through time.
Holly Lofton, director of Lindsborg's Convention and Visitors Bureau, dressed in traditional Swedish costume, sees these Dollar horses as much more than a way to get tourists to visit the city, but a celebration of the town's Swedish heritage.
To the community, it was important to remember our Swedish roots as we began to evolve and more people began to move into our community that didn't have Swedish roots. We wanted to still remember that.
The Dollar horse holds an important place in Swedish culture. While crafted as a toy centuries ago, they quickly became a tool of bartering and a pastime for Swedish men to craft in their downtime while they were away fighting wars.
The town of Lindsborg has been established for almost 150 years, but it wasn't until the 1960s that this all-American town in the center of the United States started to embrace their Swedish roots.
And in the heart of the city lies the Hemslöjd. The Swedish-themed store has become known worldwide for their work.
Here we handcraft the Dollar horse sign.
Corey Peterson owns the Hemslöjd. The store's name might sound strange in English, but in its native language, it makes perfect sense.
Hemslöjd, loosely translated, means homecraft or handicraft in Swedish.
At one point in time, the store was the largest seller in the United States of these handcrafted Dollar horses.
This is the beginning of a Dollar horse.
Starting with a simple block of wood, craftsmen quickly turn it into a piece of art.
A lot of noise and a lot of dust, but we make it work.
After about an hour of sawing and refining, the Dollar Horse is ready for some paint. Shirley Malm has been painting Dollar Horses for over 60 years. With her technique, she can get a horse painted in under 15 minutes.
I'm 80 years old. I could have retired a long time ago, and I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't love doing it.
Love is a word most in Lindsborg associate with the Dollar Horse. While their concept is centuries old, the Dollar Horse is still important.
Every city, every entity would love to have that recognizable brand, and the Dollar Horse is our brand.
You can't find Swedish folk art anywhere else, probably, to my knowledge, in the United States.
You can find them on the small town's water tower, street signs, and almost everywhere else. And it turns out their presence became more than just art.
You'll see communities of this size that are really languishing, and Lindsborg is not. We're very unique, we're very different. And I truly believe it's because of the pride we've had in this heritage and the way that we continue to embrace it and the way that we continue to build upon it.
One little painted horse is part of the reason Lindsborg hasn't suffered the same fate so many other small Kansas towns have and faded away. The Dollar Horse. It might be centuries old, but still has a lot of life to give. I'm Brian Ramsdale for Positively Kansas.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. If you have a story idea, we'd love to hear it. Send us an email at positivelykansas@kpts.org. Till next time, I'm Sierra Scott. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.